The tale of Billy the Kid, the notorious outlaw of the Old West, is a story steeped in myth, legend, and controversy. While many details of his life remain shrouded in mystery, one of the most enigmatic aspects of his story is his demise. Sheriff Pat Garrett, a man known for his role in bringing down Billy the Kid, has left behind intriguing accounts of the events leading to the fatal shot that ended the kid's life. In this video, we will delve into Pat Garrett's perspective and explore the circumstances surrounding that fateful encounter.
I did not lay about the kid's old haunts nor disclose my intentions and operations to anyone. If my apparent lack of concern deceived the public and bolstered the kid's confidence in safety, then I achieved my goal. My conviction was that the kid remained in the vicinity of Fort Sumner and the surrounding area, yet there was some doubt mingled with my belief. The kid was never perceived as foolish. Rather, he was recognized for his remarkable foresight and composed judgment despite his youthful age. It appeared implausible that, given his circumstances, facing severe legal consequences, the risk of discovery, and viable avenues for successful escape, without any strong ties binding him to that perilous region. My first task was to solve my doubts. In the beginning of July, I was pleased to receive a response to my letter addressed to Mr. Brazel. At that time, I happened to be in Lincoln. Mr. Brazel was avoiding encounters and concealing himself from the kid, as he dreaded the kid's potential revenge due to Brazel's involvement in his capture. The news of the kid's escape had many individuals worried and anxious, although most of them managed to pacify his anger through persuasion. Brazel's letter gave me no positive information. He mentioned not having sighted the kid after his escape, but suggested that various signs indicated the kid's continued presence in the region. Brazel extended his willingness to assist me in recapturing the kid. Subsequently, I composed another letter to Brazel, wherein I proposed a rendezvous at the mouth of the Tabon Arroyo an hour past sunset on the 13th day of July. During that period, a gentleman named John W. Poe had taken over the previous role held by Frank Stewart, serving the interests of the stockmen and the Canadian. Coincidentally, he was present in Lincoln for business matters, along with one of my deputies, Thomas K. McKinney. To begin the journey, I approached McKinney and outlined a business expedition to Arizona, suggesting that we initiate our trip from our home. McKinney readily agreed. Subsequently, I shared the details of my enterprise, including the relevant correspondences with Poe, who also consented to accompany me. The three of us embarked on our journey, departing from Roswell and tracing the course of the Rio Pecos. During the night of July 10th, we predominantly traveled after dark, eschewing established routes in favor of lesser-known paths. Our destination was the mouth of Tabon Arroyo, situated 5 miles south of Fort Sumner, where we arrived an hour after nightfall on July 13th. Regrettably, Brazel was not there. Despite waiting for nearly 2 hours, he did not make an appearance. We rode off a mile or two, staked our horses, and slept until daylight. Early in the morning, we ventured into the hills and engaged in reconnaissance using our field glasses. Poe was a stranger in the country, and there was little danger that he would meet anyone who knew him at Fort Sumner. Thus, after spending an hour or two conducting observations in the hills, he proceeded to Fort Sumner. I also suggested that he extend his journey to Sunnyside, which lay 7 miles upstream from Fort Sumner, and to have a conversation with M. Rudolph, a gentleman whose sound judgment and discretion I held in high regard. I arranged with Poe to meet us that night at moonrise at La Punta de la Glorieta, 4 miles north of Fort Sumner. Poe went on to the plaza, and McKinney and I rode down into the Pecos Valley, where we remained during that day. At night, we started circling the town and met Poe exactly on time at the trysting place. Poe's presence in Fort Sumner attracted no noteworthy attention, and his inquiries yielded no significant information. Rudolph thought, from all indications, that the kid was about, and yet, at times, he doubted. His cause for doubt seemed to be based on no evidence except the fact that the kid was no fool, and no man in his senses, under the circumstances, would brave such danger. We neared Maxwell's property and encountered a man encamped in the vicinity. Pausing here, we were surprised to find that the camper was none other than an old acquaintance and former Texas partner of Poe's named Jacob. Taking a break, we enjoyed some coffee and then proceeded on foot, entering an orchard extending from this point down to a row of aged structures. Several of these buildings were inhabited by Mexicans and were positioned no more than 60 yards from Maxwell's residence. Approaching the dwellings with caution, we drew near, and within earshot, the cadence of Spanish conversation reached our ears. Swiftly concealing ourselves, we strained to listen, but the distance was too great to distinguish words or identify individual voices. Gradually, a man emerged from the ground, his form visible yet too remote for recognition. He sported a wide-brimmed hat, a dark vest, and trousers, his lower legs bare. With a few words, which fell like a murmur on our ears, he went to the fence, jumped it, and walked down toward Maxwell's house. Little as we then suspected it, this man was the kid. We learned subsequently that, when he left his companions that night, he went to the house of a Mexican friend, pulled off his hat and boots, threw himself on a bed, and commenced reading a newspaper. Before long, he roused his slumbering companion, told him to get up and make some coffee, adding, "Give me a butcher knife, and I will go over to Pete's and get some beef. I'm hungry." The Mexican acquiesced, passing him the knife, and the kid, hatless and in his stocking feet, started to Maxwell's, which was but a few steps distant. Upon the kid's departure from the orchard, his identity unbeknownst to me, I signaled my comrades. With utmost care, we retreated a short distance, opting for an alternative route to approach Maxwell's residence from an opposing direction. Upon reaching the porch at the front of the building, I left Poe and McKinney at the end of the porch, approximately 20 feet from the entrance to Pete's room before entering. The hour neared midnight, and Pete rested in bed. I asked him as to the whereabouts of the kid. He said that the kid had certainly been about, but he did not know whether he had left or not. In an instant, a man sprang quickly to the door, looking back, and called twice in Spanish, "Who comes there?" With no response forthcoming, he advanced inside. He was bareheaded, and from his gait, I surmised he was either barefoot or wearing stockings. In his right hand, he wielded a revolver, and a butcher knife rested in his left. He came directly towards me. Before he reached the bed, I whispered, "Who is it, Pete?" but received no reply for a moment. It struck me that it might be Pete's brother-in-law, Manuel Abreu, who had seen Poe and McKinney and wanted to know their business. The intruder came close to me, leaning both hands on the bed, with his right hand nearly grazing my knee, and asked in a low tone, "Who are they, Pete?" It was at this precise moment that Maxwell whispered to me, "That's him." Simultaneously, the kid must have detected the presence of a third individual at the bed's head. Swiftly, he raised quickly his pistol, within a foot of my breast. Retreating rapidly across the room, he cried, "Quien es? Quien es? Who's that? Who's that?" All this occurred in a moment. Reacting as swiftly as I could, I drew my revolver, discharged a shot, shifted my body, and fired again. The second shot proved unnecessary. The kid fell lifeless. He uttered no words. A brief struggle followed, accompanied by a faint choking sound as his breath faded, and the kid joined the ranks of his numerous victims. Maxwell had plunged over the foot of the bed on the floor, dragging his bedclothes with him. I swiftly reached the door, where I encountered Poe and McKinney. Meanwhile, Maxwell surged past me and onto the porch. At his cry of, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," they lowered their weapons onto him. I assured my companions that I'd indeed taken down the kid. Doubts arose, and they questioned whether I might have erred in my target. In response, I told them I had made no blunder, that I knew the kid's voice too well to be mistaken. The kid was entirely unknown to either of them. They had seen him pass in, and as he stepped onto the porch, McKinney, who was sitting, rose to his feet. We now entered the room and examined the body. The ball struck him just above the heart and must have cut through the ventricles. Poe posed a question regarding the number of shots I had discharged. I responded with 2, although I lacked certainty about the outcome of the second shot. Both Poe and McKinney were convinced that the kid had indeed fired a shot, as there appeared to be 3 distinct gunshots. I told him that he had fired 1 shot between my 2. Maxwell chimed in, asserting that the kid had indeed discharged his firearm. However, our search for bullet marks yielded no evidence of projectiles from the kid's pistol. So, against the impression and senses of our 4 men, we had to conclude that the kid did not fire at all. Our scrutiny extended to the kid's pistol, a self-cocking .41 caliber weapon. It contained 5 cartridges and 1 spent shell in the chambers, with the hammer resting upon the shell. Yet this detail proved inconclusive, given that many individuals carry their revolvers in this manner for safety. Furthermore, the shell looked like it had been shot sometime before. It will never be known whether the kid recognized me or not. If indeed he did, it would mark the sole instance in his perilous life where he succumbed to a lapse in composure or failed to shoot first and hesitate afterward. He knew that a meeting with me meant surrender or fight. He told several persons about Sumner that he bore no animosity against me and had no desire to injure me. On the following morning, the alcalde, Alejandro Segura, held an inquest on the body. Honorable M. Rudolph, hailing from Sunnyside, presided as the foreman of the coroner's jury. They found a verdict that William H. Bonney came to his death from a gunshot wound. The weapon in the hands of Pat F. Garrett, with the firearm discharged during Garrett's official duties as sheriff. The jury concluded that the act of homicide was justifiable. The body was neatly and properly dressed and buried in the military cemetery at Fort Sumner, July 15, 1881. On the day of his death, his exact age was 21 years, 7 months, and 21 days. Again, I say that the kid's body lies undisturbed in the grave, and I speak of what I know.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.